When I was a kid, there was an ad on TV. There was a woman facing all kinds of stresses, and it ends with her in a bathtub filled with bubbles. Her head is back, her eyes are closed, she's looking blissful, and the narrator says, "Calgon, take me away." Do you remember that? Does anyone else remember that ad? It's like deep in my brain. I didn't know then, nor am I entirely sure now, what Calgon was. But the idea of a bath being indulgent definitely made no sense to me at all. But I can't get that line out of my head. In fact, as kids, we used to say it to each other all the time when we were in positions we didn't like. We'd go, "Calgon, take me away." I'd like to think of today as our collective Calgon moment. Inside a life of profound stress, maybe even grief, this is our hour for bliss. It's a moment of indulgence, at least a moment of rest. Things are looking bleak. Our city mayor manipulated his way out of accountability by agreeing to support politicized cruelty. The executive branch of the government is dismantling the structure of the nation as laid out in the Constitution. The Department of Education is being slashed within an inch of its life, endangering millions of children as well as our collective future. Food and medicine created to serve the poorest of the poor has been diverted and left to rot by the richest man in the world, while millions of our fellow Americans cheer. Every regulatory agency has been hollowed out to ensure the end of oversight or consequence for the billionaire class. Our phones beep and howl, constantly bringing us the latest in bad news, the next step in the dismantling of our democracy, the new face of incompetence being put in charge of some massive agency that does critical work about which this person knows nothing. And the mid-February cold doesn't help. Those with kids at home are also stuck without school. So kids are running around, adding to the stress. Regular patterns and habits are not happening this week. People are getting viruses, major and minor, all over the place. There's coughing and sneezing, adding to that sort of under the weather, not up to the task, I can't do any more than sit on my couch feeling that seems to have taken hold. I don't know about you, but I am not willing to just put my head down and hope that my loved ones and I survive, just watching rom-coms and reading mystery novels. But with that said, I'm also not willing to devote my life to doing nothing but fight, to resist, to live like a punching bag, getting slammed from every angle over and over until I'm bruised and broken. And if these are our only two options, the future we're building will either be defined by profound disengagement or bodies broken. But the future we want to build is bigger than that, more dynamic, more beautiful, more fulfilling. And that future is built on joy. The method is the message. How we respond to the current crisis will frame how we design the world we're fighting for. So we need to bring everything we have, our bravery, our restfulness, our playfulness, our balance and agility, our ability to engage it all. We can't allow our ongoing state of shock to ossify, turning us into screaming banshees permanently fixed in a state of alarm. The new world requires moments of soft, of pleasure, of entertaining, of delicious. It requires us to live lives filled with joy, not only because that's how we recharge, but also because we are dreaming a world that is magnificent, and that world is filled with wonderful. We pray, we dance, we mourn, we protest, we eat chocolate. It is a full life. Complete, balanced. Now, I've told you before of the story of Emma Goldman. She's been a guide for me for many years. So I'm going to tell it to you again, but this time I've got a caveat and a warning. For those who don't know, Emma Goldman was an anarchist, which for her and the left-wing activists in the early part of the 20th century was about liberation. There were rules, especially for women, that bound them into very small lives. They were fighting for the vote, but also for an end to the conventions that dictated who they were allowed to be. One day, Emma received a letter from a man after her attendance at a party had been noted by some others in the women's rights movement. The letter told her that in a time of such distress, it was unseemly for her to be seen dancing. He went on to note that her frivolity would hurt the cause and that her behavior, dancing in public, was undignified. There were, after all, very serious matters at stake. And if they were going to be successful, they needed to reflect the urgency, especially in public. In her response, she said, I'm quoting here from her memoir, she said, "I did not believe that a cause which stood for such a beautiful ideal, for release and freedom from convention and prejudice, should demand the denial of life and joy." She then went on with a version of the now famous line, "If I can't dance, I don't want to be part of your revolution." The revolution isn't separate from joy. The revolution, the dramatic upheaval of the conventions that have brought us to the brink of destruction, the revolution has to include dancing. But I have an addendum which has become critical in my understanding of the work of the activist. Reverend John Haynes Holmes wrote about Emma Goldman in his autobiography. He admired her and was very excited to meet this larger-than-life character. She was known to be bold and charismatic speaker, so he invited her here. He invited her to Community Church to speak. And the morning before she was going to speak, Reverend Holmes and a friend of his went over to Grand Central Station to meet her train, expecting to be captivated. Instead, he described her like this. I'm quoting, "Such storms had swept over that face, so weather-beaten was it in every line and feature, so unutterably sad and stern, so weary and forlorn, that one wondered if this countenance had ever been softened by a smile or graced by love." He goes on, "Emma had fought in so many battles, faced such dangers and endured such ills, been so unfairly and cruelly treated, known such suffering in body and mind, that she had no time to give to those gentler and serener aspects of the soul." He goes on to say she was exceedingly nervous, timid, and suspicious. She apparently blew the roof off the place anyway. But he was really taken aback by her disposition, one that had been permanently altered by the abuse she had taken in the fight she so willingly entered. I read that and I thought, man, I want to go back to the old Emma Goldman. I want to go back to the one that didn't want to be part of a revolution that didn't include dancing. And I think we can. I think the older woman is telling us the same story. If we forget to dance, if we forget indulgence and sparkle, we become nothing more than exhausted soldiers at the end of a battle whose lives are limited to the fight, never again to live with unfettered joy, regardless of whether we win or lose. And that's not for us. We are going to dance and sing and sleep and eat, because without joy, what is the point? What we are trying to save, or what are we trying to save? I mean, if all we have is empty and desolate and gloomy shells of a life, what is there? We require delight. Our lives are full. We cry, we protest, we organize, and we indulge ourselves in the things our bodies and our minds love. So I want to make sure I'm being really clear. This isn't about doing one thing so we have the energy for the other. Our activism and our restfulness, our fight for justice and our drinking hot chocolate, our chanting in the streets and our singing in the shower, these things are connected, and it's not about needing one to continue the other. I'm saying that these things are the same. We are building a new world while engaging all of it. Eating chocolate, taking baths, calling senators, it's all part of one life. One engaged and awake life. One balanced and beautiful life. We aren't betraying one with the other. It's interconnected, interwoven, one whole cloth that is our fullness. There is no here or there, this or that. It is all one thing, one place, one life, ours, and we are here living it as whole beings. The method is the message. So if we want to build a world of radical inclusion, we have to live into that vision now. If we want systems of accountability and communities that prioritize care of the whole, if we want everyone to be included and justice to be the law of the land, we have to normalize that with our words and actions. If we want love at the center of everything, we have to put it there now. Joy is the point. It's not a byproduct. It's not an aside. It's not a way to rest to go back and fight. The pleasure, the fun, the love that makes our days possible, that's the point. That's what we're doing here. We're creating a world of that. A place everyone has that. A place everyone can safely play and dance and sing and read romance novels. And that's why I brought chocolate. And strawberries and dates. These are things of indulgence. Life is sweet. It's smooth and soft and yummy. And it's shared. Chocolate communion may not be considered a holy act in some religious traditions, but it is here. Communion literally means with together. Our shared faith is grounded in the idea of community, of God being known within and between us. The sharing of food, of flowers, of water, it's how we express in concrete terms the sacred nature of our relationships. We don't have to know each other to share objects of joy.